Welcome to Talkin' Mets with Rob. Subscribe to the channel for all your New York Mets in-game live, pre-game, post-game, roundtable podcast, and all the breaking news for our New York Mets. Enjoy the show and let's go Mets. Welcome to Talkin' Mets with...
Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the NLDS Mets of New York town. Oh, the butcher and the baker and the people on the streets, where do they go? To meet the Mets! Oh, they're hollering and cheering and they're jumping in their seats. Where do they go? To meet the Mets! All the fans are true to the orange and blue, so hurry up and come on down, 'cause we got ourselves a ball club, the Mets of New York town. Give 'em a yell! Give 'em a hand! And let 'em know you're rooting in the stand. Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the NLDS Mets of New York town, of New York town.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to Mets Talk Live on this Mets off day postseason edition. Hopefully everybody's enjoying their Monday and a little bit of relaxation before biting their nails and going nuts throughout the ball game and the day of a Mets postseason game. But you don't have to worry about that today. This is more of a recap of the first two games of the series, and we will get into that. We will get into the series, move into Queens, the pitching matchup for Game 3, Aaron Nola, and, of course, the keys to the Game 3 success for our New York Mets. So make sure, guys, you hit on that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you're just tuning in and are not a subscriber of the channel, and you want to keep on coming back for more Mets baseball talk. This is the channel you want to come to and subscribe, because we do a ton of shows on this channel: pregame, postgame, roundtable, Mets Talk Live, in trade deadline rumors, everything you need to talk about during the season, and of course the off season with the winter meetings and all the trades, the signings, all that fun stuff as well, and the occasional in-game live that we do here on the channel. And of course, my co-host, my partner that is there for pre-games and post-game, Chris, as well. Make sure you subscribe to his channel as well. Freshly Widely, wow, how are you doing, buddy? It's been a while. All right, guys. So here we go, right? Was it disappointing yesterday? Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll be the first one to tell you it was disappointing. But there's a big but over here. And I'm going to tell you why there's a but. Because you have a preview of a series going into the postseason, right? We didn't have much time to have a conversation about the Phillies going into it, except for, like, Friday. But what it was is you wanted to actually take one game in Philadelphia, right? That is always the goal by the road team. And this is not about the wild card, because the wild card is a unique series. It's a unique mess. You don't have a home game if you're not, if you're not the higher seed in the wild card. So you're stuck, right? If you're not the first wild card or the third division winner, you're kind of stuck on the road, right? So this is your first opportunity here to go into a series where you actually will have home games, depending on how much is, obviously the Mets will have all two of their home games in this series that are going to happen because they took one of two in Philadelphia. And again, guys, this is the thing that I always get annoyed about, right? And Chris brought a great point yesterday on the postgame: recency bias. If the tables were flipped and the Mets lost game one and they won game two, the feeling would be a lot different going home in game 3 and 4, right? And, you see Explosive here saying that, oh, this was a crushing loss. The pressure's on the Mets. The Mets don't have pressure. Did you listen to that postgame yesterday? To the players, to the manager? They don't feel the pressure anymore. This ain't pressure. I think there's a hell of a lot more pressure in game 3 against the Brewers than there was going into this Philly series. The pressure is on the Phillies. If you don't believe that, and listen, what fan base is talking about pressure of the other team? That is talking about, not talking about their pressure, but talking about the other team's pressure, right? Explosive says you listen to Philadelphia radio, right? They're putting all the heat on the Mets because deep down they know the pressure's on them. This is a fan base that lost games 6 and 7 at home. They lost 3 games in a row at home in the postseason. They're a team that were very similar to the Mets 2 years ago. They lost to a team that is very similar to the Mets last year in the postseason. And you have to remember, Explosive, 100%. Now, that's a different story because there will be pressure. There's pressure on any team that's in an elimination game, right? That is not exclusive to the Mets. That's the problem that you're not understanding. Tomorrow's game can be a swing game. Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. It can be a swing game. But if there's not pressure in an elimination game, then you're not human. But right now, there isn't pressure on the Mets. There really isn't. And how many times have this team been down in pressurized situations and they came up smelling like roses? Just because they lost one game after coming back is not the end of the world. And you heard Castellanos talk yesterday, and it was more of a celebration of relief that they won, more about celebration that they actually won the ball game as just a ball game. They were very, very lucky yesterday because after Vientos hit that home run, they panned to the Phillies dugout. Harper looked like he was going to cry to his mother, and a lot of the Phillies guys were absolutely shocked. So to talk about the continued pressure, I don't believe the Phillies took back momentum, to be quite honest with you. I truly don't. I don't, because if you listen to the Mets players, and clearly David Ortiz did not, if you listen to it and you listen to the manager of the Mets and listen to the players, they're like, it sucks we lost, but we did our jobs. You took one game out on the road in the first 2 games. That's what you have to look at. You can't look at yesterday, because where was the momentum from the Mets in game 2 from game 1, right? Momentum is the next day starting pitcher. All right. Let's be perfectly clear about that, because the Mets had momentum in game 1 after game 1 going into game 2 against the Brewers. They lost that game. The Brewers had all the momentum going into game 3. The Mets won that game. The Phillies had all the momentum in the world in game 1 with the fans behind them, the fans going nuts, going out to a lead in the first batter of the ball game. All the momentum was to them. and the Mets won that game. So momentum, when the game is over, doesn't go to the next game. It really doesn't. If you believe that, then are you paying attention? It comes down to the next day's starting pitcher and what you do to limit or move up in the game any way possible. Striking out the side in the top of the first, or getting 1, 2, 3 in the top of the first, getting your offense out there when you're at home. Right? The Phillies did that yesterday. And again, guys, regardless if you believe if the pressure's on the Mets or the Phillies, say if it's both, who's prevailed lately in pressurized situations? Because I remember in 1 week, the Mets did it 4 times. Excuse me, I'm a liar. Yes, 4 times. The Braves game 1 of the Brewers, because there was a lot of pressure on the Mets because first postseason game, right? Wasn't easy. They did come back in that game. Game 3, elimination. And Saturday in game 4. What do you say? The Mets have never clinched a postseason game in Citi Field. Mets have the pressure. No. That's irrelevant, right? Why haven't they clinched in the postseason at Citi Field? Because most of the time, especially in the division series, you get 2 home games when the other teams have 3, right? And when you're in the NLCS, you might have 3 home games out of 4. And most of the time, if you don't sweep in the NLDS, you're not going to get, probably, there's a pretty good chance you're not going to win the series on at home. All right? So there's a lot of circumstances of that. So there's pressure on the Phillies. They're trying to push it away from them because they know there's pressure on them. This is the same team. Yeah, explosive. I agree with that. I agree with the whole Diaz situation. I think I think he needs a blow, and that's why this off day is really going to help us, to be quite honest with you. Now, this is the job that the Mets have to do. Don't let Diaz be a factor tomorrow. That's it. How about that? How about going into a game where you have a 3-4 run lead and you probably don't need your closer in the top of the 9th? How about that? Right? That would help. Giving him 2 straight days off, that would be very nice. The fact of the matter is, the New York Mets are facing a division winner, right? The same Phillies fans that are now talking about pressure, because they didn't talk about no pressure when this series started, right? Nothing at all. They didn't talk about pressure. All I heard was the Mets are going to get swept. There's no contest. The Phillies are better than the Mets. Yet they forget rather quickly that the Phillies the last 2 seasons beat teams better than them when they were in similar positions with the Mets, especially in 2022. They were the Mets. The Mets are the Phillies of 2022. It's very similar here, where you beat teams better than you. So soon they forget when it's not them. Right? The fact of the matter is, the Mets still came back twice in this ballgame yesterday when the Phillies thought, oh, we got the lead, game over. It took 1 swing in the bat to get right back into the ballgame. And this is the same thing I continue to talk about, right? They got back into the ballgame because of home runs. They got a couple of hits, right? Got a couple of hits, absolutely. But they got back into this ballgame via the home run. The Mets, on the other hand, right? They used their power yesterday to get a lead. They used their power yesterday to come back. But what also do the Mets do? They can also string hits together and score runs as well. I don't believe the Phillies can string 4, 5, 6 hits in an inning to score multiple runs, because they don't do that often, if at all. They don't. They really don't. And that's a fact. Look at all the stats that you see. The fact of the matter is, they just need, and again, the Mets should have won this game, right? I don't believe the Phillies ever were in control of game one, except for the score of 1-0. Right? I truly believe the Mets lost this game more than the Phillies won that game. And this is not about not giving credit to the Phillies, because that's not fair to them. But can we be honest here? Guys that you needed to get the job done, it just came down to execution, right? One or two mistakes, and it was the end of it. So remember, you can claim pressures on the Mets or on the Phillies. The fact of the matter is, both teams have a little bit of room if they lose, because it's not an elimination game. Now, game 4 will be an elimination game for somebody. And listen, the Phillies are going to try. They're going to be, and listen, the Phillies are the desperate team. And I'm going to tell you why. Because the Phillies think the Mets are not in their league, which is completely wrong. Because if you really look deep down, they're a team that has flaws, right? The bullpen of the Phillies can't get the Mets out. That's a fact, right? The Mets didn't have a chance to come back after they scored that in the bottom of the 9th run, right? Because, well, they had last licks, right? That was their only saving grace in that game yesterday that nobody seems to want to talk about. If the Mets had another at bat, I felt pretty good that they were going to win that ball game. But they weren't the home team. Now they are. So the Phillies in the back of their mind when they take a lead, knowing the Mets are going to come back because that's been their MO. 44 come from behind wins this year. This is not just a week of the playoffs. This has been a season-long comeback for the New York Mets. A lot of people don't want to talk about that, and the Phillies are shying away from that. Their best asset yesterday was that they got the last at-bat. That was it. They also had the last at-bat on Saturday, but they did nothing of it. They got a couple of lousy hits, and they actually scored a run to make it a 4-run ball game. And that was it. So we have to always remember, especially now that the Mets do have the last at bat over the next 2 games. That is key. Remember, guys, the Mets haven't been back home in 2 weeks. Remember, we had the last 2 series of the year were away. Plus the playoffs, the Braves games, the Brewers, and we started on the road in the NLDS. So basically 2 weeks on the road. We haven't been home in a while. That's going to jumpstart this team. They're going to be riled up. Now, they can't overpitch. They can't overswing like the Phillies did in game 1. They can't do that. But I seen the Mets have poise in those situations. I seen them breathe easy in those situations. The Phillies were scared shitless in those 2 games on Saturday and Sunday. They were. And again, this is by no means saying that, oh, they're just going to fall over and die. They're probably not. But that doesn't, we're not giving enough credit to the Mets. Real Muta says, Nimmo smack talk and woke them up. Okay, so did it? Nimmo wasn't smack talking when Vientos hit that 2-run homer. But could we understand that? Everybody's smack talking. The Phillies were smack talking, and the Mets are smack talking. It's baseball. It's competitiveness. It's a game within the game. So Ryomoto thinks that the Mets were the only ones smack talking. Come on, seriously. You got guys like Harper that is the biggest bum when it comes to smack talking. Yet he's the same guy that, also is on a team that still hasn't won a World Series. As soon as he left, the Nationals won the World Series. Right? So they need to calm down about that because they're slowly but surely backing up when it comes to postseason references. They made the World Series in 2022, lost. They made the NLCS, lost. Now they're in the NLDS, where they could lose. So are they going backwards? That's a possibility as well. They won't bring that up, though, right? Because all the problems the Phillies had in Game 1, and you heard on Sports Talk Radio the next day, Philly fans act like the series was over. And the momentum starts with the next day starting pitcher. And when it comes to the series coming to New York, coming to Queens, coming to Citi Field, right? Aaron Nola splits, as I said yesterday on the post game, are very even across road and home, right? The ERA is a little bit higher on the road, which you kind of expect, right? It was 3.28 at home and 3.78 on the road, right? The home runs are even, 15 and 15. So we give up 30 home runs this year. So he's prone to the long ball, right? Hits are more on the road than at home. Walks are more at home. I'm on the road than home, right? So is he the better pitcher over Sanchez when it comes to home and road? Yes. But there's only two different ways Aaron Nola pitches. It's either great or really bad. And Philly fans won't talk about the bad part. They'll talk about how great he is. Because they were claiming 3 years ago that he was their ace. And that was when they got Zach Wheeler. And I always fought with the Philly fans that Nola is never an ace. He never was. He never was. And they're going to continue to put on that good side of Nola, but there's a bad side because he doesn't pitch in between. He doesn't have a solid start where he'll go 6 innings but give up 3 runs. He'll go 5 innings and give up 5 runs, or he'll go 7 innings and give up 0 runs. But here's the thing that I seen. I seen the Mets get to the Phillies bullpen. And did the Phillies get to the Mets bullpen yesterday? Yes. But they also didn't help themselves. If you look at the hits before the hits, what were happening there? It was the walks, right? We got to stop giving base runners to these guys because you didn't want to, quote unquote, face that guy, right? Trying to not throw a fastball to Trey Turner and throwing a slider to Trey Turner makes no sense. Trey Turner wasn't looking to swing that bat. You could have thrown a fastball right down the middle. He would have looked at it and was like, oh, that's a strike. Because he was looking to get on by a walk. He wasn't looking to get on by a base hit. And that was obvious with the at-bat. He swung one time in that at-bat. So that is exactly why I think the Mets, who were able to get to this bullpen consistently in the first 2 games against the Phillies. So the good bullpen of the Phillies, the guys that they trust in that bullpen, who do they trust? Because all their high leverage guys, except for Alvarado, who hasn't pitched yet, all gave up hits. All got taken out of the game before giving up runs. Or if they did give up runs, the next guy came in and also gave up runs. Remember, guys, we do forget because the Mets lost. But Strom, who was one of their better pitchers and they're one of their best lefties, gave up the bomb to Vientos. And again, the Phillies had the last at bat. So the Mets couldn't come back if they went ahead. Right? That's the unfortunate part. But this time they do. So it's okay. Right? We're all going to be nervous tomorrow. We're all going to be biting our fingers. Right? It's going to be fun going to Citi Field, looking at Citi Field, rocking and all that fun stuff as well. But we do have the next 2 games at home. The Phillies need to win 1. I don't necessarily believe, and Explosive said it, that, oh, they want the game to go back to Game 5. Of course they do. Because if it doesn't, they're done. Right? But the Mets can still have 3 games to go to do what they need to do. Regardless if they're in an elimination game in Game 4 or they're trying to eliminate the Phillies in Game 4. Because Game 4 is going to be an elimination game for somebody. but at least the Mets are home. Either way. And why would you not have faith in the Mets, regardless of the situation, when, especially in Game 4, when they have the last licks, they have the last at bat, and even with Wheeler, who will be pitching on, I would say, short rest or just a right amount of rest, if I'm not mistaken, right? I believe so, right? It should be a normal rest, right? They still got to the Phillies bullpen. So unless Wheeler goes 9 innings, which, again, could be possible, you can get to the bullpen. And this is the key that I took out the series, the 2 games so far. Rob Thompson doesn't know who to throw because the Mets have beat up all those guys. And Alvarado is basically a late inning guy. So they're going to still use those high-level guys that we have seen to try to get the job done, but yet the Mets hit them already. So we'll see. And again, a lot can happen, but it also comes down to the starting pitcher tomorrow. You got your ace on the mound, right? Just like, the Phillies had the ace on the mound with Zach Wheeler, but it didn't help him win a game. Now, I would love to see Sean Manaea, pitch like an ace tomorrow. He's damn good at home, outstanding at home, to be exact. We need that Sean Manaea to step the hell up. And because Jose Quintana can't be the best pitcher in this postseason at this point. Quintana had the best start for the Mets in the 5 games they've played so far in the postseason. That can't happen. Now, I like Quintana to be good, but we need Manaea to step up here. We need a dominant performance here. Now, that doesn't mean the Mets are going to win if we have a dominant performance, because Nola might go 0 for 0 with him. But I'm feeling more confident in Sean Manaea coming into this game because it's not at home. Because remember, his last couple of starts have been on the road as well. So I think coming back home is going to be helpful for the Mets, to be quite honest. I mean, when you haven't been home in 2 weeks and you've been on the road, you've been in hotels for 2 weeks, and they still continue to win ball games and advance, I mean, they got to be extremely ready to go. They showed up in that Philly series during the season when the Mets needed those games. And yes, technically the Phillies didn't need those games, but they were trying to stamp their division title as well. So they weren't not trying. They did beat the Phillies at home. And they can talk about Taijuan Walker all you want, but come on, seriously? You didn't have to throw Taijuan Walker. So the good news is, explosive. The game's it's going to be insane tomorrow. Insane. And the Mets have played extremely much better. You know how we were talking about 3 months ago where the Mets weren't playing so well at home? They're playing extremely well on the road the last couple of months. Extremely well. And don't think the Mets fans aren't going to be a 12th man. Right? There's a lot of Mets players on his team, especially the core, that except for game 1 of the wild card in 2022 when Citi Field was jumping, but it wasn't jumping like it's going to be tomorrow. Because I went to the game 2 and game 3. We saw the pockets of empty seats in game 1, in game 2, and game 3 at Citi Field. But we all know what happened in 2022 that led to that moment. Right? A lot of depressed Met fans because we didn't win the division, because we got spoiled that season and we never had any pressure until the end of the season. And then Met fans, cried in the corner and not go support their team at Citi Field, which they should have. But there's a different feeling around this Mets team. And I think all of us agree with that. Because what I remember from this team, and it's a very recent memory, in a week, they've bounced back from bad losses. They have. They've proven it time and time again. Even in game, when they get gut punched in games where a team took the lead on them or they tied the ball game. Here comes the bounce back Mets coming right back and doing what they need to do to win the ball game. Because the both games we lost in this postseason was because, well, not even because, was the only two games they went out to a lead in the postseason early. Every game they won, they had to come back. The other team scored first. The both games they lost, game 2 in the wild card and game 2 of the NLDS, they took the lead first. And they lost both of those games. Now, I still rather score first, regardless of what has happened in past games, because you want that lead, especially at home. But I know this team can come back. And that's why when there is not a lead and they might be trailing, I still feel confident they're going to score runs and they're going to come back in this ballgame. So there should be a lot of confidence with this Mets team. Now, confidence and saying tomorrow when the game starts, am I going to be nervous? Yes, we're human. Of course. Philly fans will be nervous, will be nervous. You're not a real fan if you're not nervous for your team in the playoffs, regardless of the situation, regardless of whoever you think has pressure. But the Mets are finally home. There was a possibility starting this postseason, the Mets would never have a home game. At least when they got to the NLDS, they know there would at least be one in game 3 of the NLDS. Now you're going to have at least 2. Embrace it. The players are. That's what they talked about after the game yesterday. They said, yeah, tough loss, but we did our job taking one of these games in Philadelphia. Now we're going back home. And they can't wait to be in front of that crowd. This team has done magic on the road for a week and a half, almost 2 weeks, without being at home. Now they come back home with a fan base that loves this team, that believes in this team. And the players believe. And I truly believe that they're not going to go down without a fight every single game. They fought until their last at bat yesterday. They just couldn't get back up after the bottom of the ninth. That was the Phillies' lucky charm with their last licks. I believe Rob just scammed me, woke up the Phillies. No. Why woke up the Phillies? The Phillies woke up the Mets. What woken up the Phillies when the Mets came back twice? Even after the Nimmo smack talk, the Mets still came back. So if it woke them up, shouldn't they have just won that game without Vientos hitting that 2-run homer? Shouldn't they have got the job done? I don't believe the Mets woke up the Phillies. I truly don't. Because they can't stop the Mets from scoring. They cannot. They really cannot. Their bullpen continues to give up runs. And that's why I need a starter to put up some zeros here. Because I think that's going to be the difference. I don't believe Rob Thompson has anybody trusted that hasn't given up runs in this series yet. Even guys who look good still gave up runs. Greg Nola is an absolute horse. Again, are you one of those Philly fans that think this guy is great? Because this guy he's had good postseason games. I'll give you that. But stop making this guy out to be Zach Wheeler, because he never was or will be. And I did say this about Aaron Nola. He's either great or he's bad. There isn't an in-between. So what are we going to get? Can you get that great start Of course they are. Absolutely. Oh, no. Wheeler's a beast. That's not even a horse. He's a beast. And we all knew that going into the series. Met fans included. But we don't have to beat Wheeler to win a ball game. Perfect example was game 1. So, no, Greg, that's not true at all. Nola actually has bad numbers against the Mets. He's pitched better at Citizens Bank than he did in Citi Field. So he has not. He's had good starts against the Mets, but a lot of them has been at Citizens Bank. So, yeah, Greg, but look at the numbers, home and road. Right now, this year he's been great he's been very even on both sides. Have you looked at his career or recently? I'm curious. Now, again, I keep on saying that I'm not saying Nola's going to have a bad game or a good game. I'm not saying that. The same way I'm not going to say Minaya is going to have a good game or a bad game. Because the Philly fans know this very well. Shit can happen really quickly in the postseason. And yes, shoot it exactly. The Phillies are a 500 team on the road. Yeah, the last time we faced Nola, we scored 7 runs. Yes, correct. As I'm just pulling up the stats. But Nola can have great starts. But he can also have really bad starts. There isn't an in-between with him. Yeah, well, great. I get that. But that's what I'm saying, right? We can both be right. But the fact is, okay, this year all that matters. Because this year's Phillies team is facing this year's Mets team, right? 2022 Phillies aren't facing the 2023 Mets, right? This year matters. So, and that's the other thing. And again, oh yeah, Greg, absolutely. And listen, there was too many Philly fans that think this was going to be a no contest for the Phillies. Like they can sleepwalk through this series. And you know what? They realized rather quickly that isn't true. Now, I still think they believe they are the better team, which they should believe that. But that's only on paper, right? Philly fans should know very, very well that you don't have to be the best team in the postseason on paper to win. The Mets are doing what the Phillies did in 2022, right? That's exactly what they should realize. It's very similar. The Mets won a couple of more games during the season, but they were very, very similar to what the Phillies did. The Phillies got red hot at the end, and they ran that run right into the postseason. And last time I checked, the Phillies also lost some games as well. But that doesn't mean that they're winning the World Series because they are the better team on paper, because the Brewers were a better team than the Mets on paper. Right? The Dodgers are the better team than the Padres, but I think we all feel the Padres are going to win that series. Right? I'm not even going to talk about the National League because it's an embarrassment. Right? At least the National League teams are actually good, unlike the American League teams that the Yankees are going to probably face. Yeah, Greg, you see, you're one of those Philly fans that thinks that, the Phillies going to sleepwalk through this series, right? You just said it's going to be a great series. So if the momentum's that high to the Phillies, then why would you say it's a great series? Because you should win the next 2 games at Citi Field and call it a night and wait for the Dodgers, Padres, and whoever you face. All right, it's going 5, so the momentum isn't that good to the Phillies then. So you just contradicted yourself, buddy. It's okay. It's all right. We all contradict ourselves. But the good news is that there's a game 3 tomorrow for both of us. It's in Queens. Place is going to be rocking, just like Citizens Bank was rocking. The Phillies can quiet the crowd of Citi Field, just like the Mets quiet the crowd at Citizens Bank. That's the beauty of baseball. That's the beauty of this sport. That's why we love it. That's why we watch 162 games plus postseason, because we're just nuts, crazy, and probably dumb because of it, because we like torture. But the pitching matchup is a very interesting pitching matchup tomorrow. Now, if Manaea was pitching the way he was for most of the season for the Mets, I would say the Mets would have the advantage pitching-wise going into the game tomorrow. But that's not fair to the Phillies or Aaron Nola, because Nola has pitched a little bit better than Manaea over the last couple of weeks. And that's being fair to the Phillies. But I do believe that both of these guys have another level to them that can shut the opposing lineup down. Will that pop up, or will it be a scramble with these two starters who will give up runs? And you hope that one of the two bullpens put zeros on the board. Because in 2 games, the Phillies bullpen hasn't put zeros. The Mets, in one of the 2 games, didn't put up zeros. So it's an intriguing matchup. Very intriguing matchup. What is going to happen? Who knows? That's why we watch, right? That's why we watch. So game 3 tomorrow. Mets, Phillies, Citi Field, 40+ thousand at Citi Field, just like there was, I don't know how many are in Citizens Bank, but it's more than 40,000 at Citizens Bank Park. Now it's at Citi Field. The Mets have 2 of the last 3 home games in this NLDS. They took back home field advantage. Could the Phillies take it back? We'll see. But the books will be written for either side. Who will prevail in the NLDS? The future will decide. One of the teams is going to step up. Who will it be? Can't wait for tomorrow. Before we finish the stream, the keys to the game for tomorrow for the New York Mets is very similar to every other single game. Keep the Phillies in the ballpark. They're not very good at stringing 4, 5, 6 hits together like the Mets have done in this postseason. Stop walking guys when you don't have to. Stop shying away from certain guys that you don't have to. You didn't need to walk those guys yesterday. You did, and it burned you. Stay away from that. Keep the ball in the ballpark against them. And when it comes to Manaea, zeros. I want to see ace Manaea like we've seen most of this season. So 3 keys. Manaea, put up those zeros. Keep Philadelphia in the ballpark. And continue to do what the offense of the Mets continue to do. Now, we do have a righty on the mound. It'll be very interesting what Mendoza does. Is it going to be Winker bringing that attitude as the lefty bat against Nola? Or, because JD Martinez had a pretty good day, is he going to go with JD Martinez? Very interesting call. Wouldn't mind either one, but I do like that attitude that Winker brings. Even though he's not the most talented, he has swing and miss ability, which Nola has swing and miss pitches. But do you want that attitude? Because that attitude fires a fan base up, especially at home. We'll see. We'll be ready to go. Phillies will be ready to go. Mets will be ready to go. The fan bases will be ready to go. And now the Mets and the Phillies play game 3 of the NLDS. Can't wait for tomorrow, guys. Me and Chris, pre and post, win or lose, doesn't matter. We show up. Pre-game will probably be around 3. Is the game at 4 o'clock tomorrow, 5 o'clock tomorrow? I got to double check that. I thought I saw 5-ish. Yeah, it's 5. 5:08 tomorrow. There you go. I thought I saw 5:08. 5:08 tomorrow is game time. Pre-game is probably going to be around 3:30. We usually do it an hour and a half before the game, so we can get in about 45 minutes to an hour of the pre-game. And then post-game, whenever the game is over, win or lose, me and Chris will be there for the post-game to recap the game. With that said, guys, thank you for tuning in to another edition of Mets Talk Live, postseason edition, right here on Talking Mets with Rob. If you haven't as of yet, hit that like button, guys. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. If you're watching on X, head over to the channel and hit that subscribe button, guys. Game 3 tomorrow, Mania, Nola, Mets, Phillies at Citi Field in Queens. Have a great day, guys. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. I'll see you tomorrow for the pregame at 3:30. Let's go, Mets, and I'll see you tomorrow, guys. Good night.
Welcome to Talkin' Mets with Rob. Subscribe to the channel for all your New York Mets in-game live, pre-game, post-game, roundtable podcast, and all the breaking news for our New York Mets. Enjoy the show and let's go Mets.
Come on! Let's go!